morning. Thank you for choosing Citizen TV for all your news and information. I am Ann Kiguta and welcome to Citizen Extra. Let's take you around the country with the news that we're following for you this morning. And news just in is that Fort Kenya's Richard Onyonka has retained his Kitutu Chache South seat, re-elected for a third time as the area MP. He garnered some 10,122 votes. His closest challenger, Anthony Kibagendi of Jubilee Party, came in with 5,074 votes. And NASA leader Raila Odinga is expected to land in the United States later today. He's going to be meeting a cross-section of U.S. leaders, including those of Congress. He'll also be giving public lectures in the United States touching on democracy, and we'll be giving you details on that shortly. Now, lecturers are expected to hold peaceful demos in the capital this morning. This is their second week out of office. Their protests this morning are set to kick off from the University of Nairobi's Graduation Square. They'll be making their way down to Parliament and then to Jogoo House to raise their grievances. And in Nyeri, burial preparations for the late Governor Wahome Gakuru are underway. We'll be catching up with our reporter there with details on plans to lay him to rest, as well as how the county is managing with this news and its plans to continue with the county government. We'll have details on that very shortly. But let's start Citizen Extra on that note, listening into the Deputy Governor of Nyeri, Mutahi Kahiga, earlier.
Welcome to the county, and thank you for keeping Nyeri informed. This morning, we've just held a brief meeting with the top leadership in the county, briefly to just lay down the plans for the burial preparations for our late governor and Dr. Wahome Gakuru. First and foremost, I have not had the opportunity to address Nyeri, and I would wish to pass my condolences to all of them, to the citizens of Nyeri, to the family, Catherine and the children, and to all the peace-loving citizens of this county and this country. We have indeed lost a great visionary leader in Dr. Wahome Gakuru, the third governor of Nyeri. It's so sad that it's happening just 8 months after we lost the first governor, the late Nderito Gachagua. And for us, we just accepted the way things are. We will move on as a county. We are deep inside now, getting ready to lay him to rest, which will be done in his home in Kericho. Currently, it is important to tell you that we are going to have a three-pronged attack on this matter. We are going to have a national coordination committee that will be chaired by CS Mucheru and the Council of Governors, where we'll also be occasionally attending. We will also be having the county committee, which I'll be chairing with together with Honorable Wambugu Gojiri, the MP for Nyeri Town. We will also rope in the senator and the other elected leaders. That will be the county leadership, that is the MCAs and through their speaker, and also the members of parliament. The senator will work together, and of course this team behind me and everybody in this county. We are committed towards giving our late governor a very honorable burial. We will also have the third prong, which will be the family. I'm sure you are aware that he has a family. His family is in Nairobi, in Runda, and we also have the family at home in Kericho. There will be that coordination so that the three teams will work together towards ensuring that our brother has a very, very honorable burial. And we may not be able to give the exact date, though chances are high. We have a proposed date of 18th. That will be Saturday, which has been occasioned by him having a son who is sitting KCSE, and we had to look at the times when that young man would be free to come do what is necessary. We are also planning to have a Requiem Mass in Nairobi that may be held sometime next week, and I will confirm the date in due course. Otherwise, that is the way we want to move. And as a county, we want to plead with the people of Nyeri, the wonderful citizenry of Nyeri, to join hands together as we know they are mourning, and it's time for us to work together around this. But let them know that Nyeri will stand again. Nyeri has suffered adversity before, and it has still come out stronger. For us, the pledge is that we want to work together. You can see the team behind me. These are the appointees of the governor. We are still working together, and we are focused on ensuring that beyond everything else, we will deliver the governor's vision for Nyeri. If there are any questions, maybe we can take them.
Maybe what you finished in the transition of government.
Yes.
Nyeri residents yesterday following the death of the governor were asking what is the way forward, especially in terms of county leadership. So what are some of the plans, and maybe when can we expect to see that transition happen?
Maybe it's right to say this, that currently we are not in a political situation, but in a legal situation. And so where our legal matters are concerned, the necessary steps will be taken, and where we needed to fulfill any legal obligation, it will clearly be done. You can see behind us we have our legal advisor, we have our county lawyer, and all these things will be looked into. So where the legal obligation is, we will take care of that. Yes. Definitely there will not be any power vacuum. What we need to do is to hold Nyeri together, let Nyeri remain steady. We want to, our focus now is to ensure that Dr. Patrick Wahome Gakuru, especially at this time of mourning, for his family and for the citizens of Nyeri, is given a very decent burial. And if our focus is going to be anything else, we will have lost direction. Our focus should be to ensure that Dr. Wahome Gakuru has the very best that we can offer him, because he was a visionary leader. He was a man of the people. He has just gone through a wonderful election and been elected by almost 85% of the people of Nyeri. So ours is to focus on that. The others are legal obligations that have to be undertaken. And I am sure you are well aware that there are legal obligations that have to be met so that the county can move forward. And for that, we have no choice. This is legal, and we have to undertake that.
And on the same side, would you be able to give us a timeline? For example, when according to the Constitution, there's a swearing-in that is expected to happen. Would you be able to give us a timeline when that should be done?
Yes, I can tell you that it will be done as soon as it is practically possible. Yes. Are we good? Thank you very much.
The last question he was responding to is when he would be sworn in as governor, saying that it would be done as soon as practically possible. Deputy Governor Mutahi Kahiga saying Nyeri will stand again. I want to introduce you to my panel in studio before we take you live to Nyeri for more. To my immediate right is Dr. Stanley Karanja. He is a governance expert. Next to him is Joseph Simeha, who is a NASA strategist. Next to him is the Murang'a Senator Irungu Hangata, who is also the Deputy Chief Whip in the Senate. And next to him, Dr. Alutalala Mukwana, who is an advocate. And I'll be speaking to you all very shortly. But first, let's go straight to Nyeri now, where our Martin Monene is standing by for us. Martin, good morning. How is Nyeri coping with the death of a second governor in just about 8 months?
A very good morning to you. And like you said, Nyeri is facing something unique, the death of a second governor in 1 year. And we just spoke to the governor earlier, the deputy governor rather earlier, and he said that himself, the staff in the county government and generally Nyeri people are still struggling to come to terms with what happened yesterday, the loss of the Nyeri governor, and the deputy governor insisting that plans are underway at the national level, county level, and also at his family level to ensure that the governor gets the right send-off. I want to emphasize on the county level because leaders from this county and various stakeholders, including the citizenry of Nyeri County, will have a part in this. In just
All right, we apologize for the challenge with that link. We're going to come back to Martin very shortly. But let me start with you, Senator Hangata, because you come from the general region. How are Nyeri residents, I know you're from Mourning, but how are Nyeri residents coping, and what's the, I suppose, inter-county support that you're offering?
Well, first and foremost, allow me to send my condolences to the family and friends of the late governor. He was a good man. I knew him at a personal level. Number two, in reply to your question, the people of Nyeri and also the adjoining counties, they are quite sad, in particular because this is the second loss that has befallen Nyeri County. And therefore, I foresee quite a lot of uncertainty in terms of the political direction of that county. But of course, we do have the deputy governor who we hope he'll be able to step into those large shoes of the governor. Be that as it may, he was a very good governor. Most likely would have delivered Nyeri to very good political and economic heights.
Yeah, and I mean, he was, as you've rightly mentioned, a governor who also took over at a time of tragedy and had to rise to the occasion, you know, very quickly to stabilize a county that, you know, was the first, I believe, to lose a governor. What were his plans as you understand them, and where does it leave the deputy governor now?
The plans of the late governor were anchored in the Vision 2030, which is guiding this country and which he was a key architect in its formulation. So what he wanted to do was merely to take that Vision 2030, replicate it at a macro level or a micro level in Nyeri County. And when you look at that vision, it entailed, number one, huge investments in infrastructure. I'm sure you have seen in today's newspaper where he had proposed, we revived the railway, right, which cuts across several counties in our region. Yes. And so you can see he was more into infrastructural-led development, and which to me is his legacy in Vision 2030. Number two, he was quite educated. I am not aware of any other governor in our region who has a PhD in any subject. So on that account, he had a lot of interest in uplifting education standards in Nyeri. Nyeri for a very long time has been a trailblazer when it's come to issues of education, but it has been lagging behind when you look at the results of KCPE, KCSE, and therefore he wanted to do some more investments in that area. Notwithstanding, education remained basically a function of the national government, but it is allowable in law for one to do some investment in that area based on some collaboration with the national government. Yeah,
he wasn't, you know, a politician per se. He was, you know, when Nderitu Gachagua, of course, was the incumbent, there was little known of him. You know, he was very much a person in the background, but he found himself in this political office and also at an electioneering period and had to rise to the occasion. How did he fare in politics?
Well, he made his first step to become the governor in the year 2013. He tried to vie by using TNA. He clinched the nomination, but when he came to the last leg of that election, he lost to the late governor. And the reason that happened was on the basis, number one, the other competitor was quite strong politically, was quite experienced, was a former member of parliament, so he knew the political terrain. But him was purely a professional. And therefore, he was unable to withstand what we call political propagandas, which usually emerge immediately one clinches a party ticket. So he was unable to do it. But immediately after that, it appears the people of Nyeri at a certain point started to remember him. And this election, he did not even campaign at all. I can recall recall one used to go to Nyeri and people used to say, no. Our governor, we have told him not to spend even a coin. We are just going to elect him. So I think there was like a political bounce. And people started realizing, oh, we would probably have to have tested this professional. He's not a politician per se. And also his character. He was quite an amiable politician. Nyeri for the last 5 years has been quite bombastic politically. So they wanted him on the basis of his amiability. Probably they could have had a situation where you have a person who cherishes dialogue, a person who can be able to bring all leaders together. But also, most importantly, from his political history, it tells something about people who comes out of professional life into politics and how they usually fare. You can see how in the first election he lost, not on the basis he can't deliver, but his inability probably to weather the political storms which are usually part and parcel of this game.
And I'm going to open it up to the rest of my panel shortly, but what can you tell us about his deputy, Governor Mutahi Kahiga, who now faces this monumental task?
The truth is I do not know him much, but I have seen that he's a former unionist. I don't know whether maybe, well, I am sure and I hope that he's going to use those skills as a former unionist to steer the county to greater heights. But I can confess he's not a person who is well known to
He's not pretty much well known. Fair enough. Let me open it up to the rest of my panel. Joseph, let me start with you. It is a tragedy, and it's a double tragedy to Nyeri, a county that, you know, is trying to get on its feet like the rest of the country, but continuously facing this significant setback of losing a governor. We have heard from Irungu that he does foresee some sort of uncertainty. What are your thoughts on that, and how can the county, you know, be stabilized at such a time?
Yes, it's certainly extremely unfortunate for Nyeri County, and it's not just a loss for Nyeri County; it's a loss for the nation, for the country, Kenya, because this governor joins the unfortunate statistics of people who die in circumstances when you view them, you think that this should not have happened, that this could have been avoided. When you hear, for example, even the police and highway authorities say, it's a black spot, it's a slippery place, it always happens. It's like we have normalized things that must not be normal, and they lead to this kind of extremely unfortunate tragedies. It's so unfortunate that he has joined that list of people who have died from, for example, crisis in the health sector, police brutality, assassinations, and so on. A lot of reasons that, you know, are unfortunately taking a toll on our nation, when we have the capacity to avoid. If only there was the goodwill, we can, or rather minimize, at the very minimum, just minimize deaths that occur from circumstances that can actually be avoided. You leave yourself feeling you remain feeling very bitter and beating yourself. Couldn't that have been avoided? Right. Couldn't the possibility of that happening have been avoided? In terms of stability of the county, I expect that, you know, it will eventually get stabilized. Obviously, it's shaken because it lost a governor barely. I don't think we've done even a year. You know, just a few months since they lost a governor, and then again they lose a governor. You obviously have to ask yourself, what's going on here? But Nyeri will, as the deputy governor said, I believe will stand strong and will get over this. I believe it has many other men and women who are capable of holding it together as a county. Obviously, you can never ever replace. That was the governor. Even though the deputy steps into his shoes and becomes the next governor, it's impossible. You cannot replace. In fact, perhaps, well, obviously, when we are coming up with law, the Constitution and other laws, we don't anticipate the worst. But anyhow, we put in place mechanisms just in case. But now, look, we are being faced with a situation where 2 governors have died within very quick successions, and their deputies have stepped in accordance with the law. Now we might actually start begin to ask, did we actually put the right thing in the Constitution? Right. That there should not be a possibility of the electorate, maybe after some time, being given a chance to elect another, at least either to confirm that deputy themselves, or if not, elect another governor, but of course within a certain space, because perhaps we may want to say that if only 1 or 2 years are left on his term, then a deputy can take over and you don't need to go to an election. But if it's just the beginning of the term, you may want to ask the people of Nyeri or whichever other county or constituency or even the nation, are you okay with this deputy or do you want someone else?
It does certainly make one think a lot more about that position of deputy governor.
Yes.
And that they ought to be just as good.
Precisely.
As the governor.
And that is not always the case. That's a fact. It's not always the case that the deputy is as good as the principal.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Karanja, your thoughts on that?
My condolences to the late Dr. Gakuru. Kenya has lost a great man. And your question to Nyeri. This is one of the counties that we were expecting with Dr. Gakuru. The amount of knowledge, what he had with Vision 2030, that he will be able to bring it to now to a macro level at the Nyeri. And we're expecting one of the county that's gonna be the leading county could be Nyeri. And Nyeri is one of the great places, though also where I come from, Nakuru, is one of the great places. Shows how the Kenya behaves. You pinch Nakuru, then you see how the reaction of Kenya is. But for Nyeri, it's very interesting. We can also go back to its politics in 2013, whereby the Nyeri people, they're this type of people who really are very rational in what they do. And with that, that's what I believe, that Nyeri will still prosper. Remember, with all these political hula-baloos, Nyeri, they chose the people they wanted. They chose from different parties, from their senator, then Mutahi Kagwe, with NAC, then there was the women rep, and then there was Derito Gachagua. So for Nyeri, even if these things are happening to them, it's very sorry for Nyeri and for the country. But again, you see where Nyeri was. He was trying to link the entire Mount Kenya. When all these plans were coming with the standard SGR, nobody has talked about the linking of the Mount Kenya side. And you see, he was not selfish. In his planning, he was talking about the railway to go all the way to Nanyuki, passing there. And you can see where Nyeri is, where we require credible leadership. One side, it borders Laikipia, on the other side, Kirinyaga. Then we have the Muranga, where Senator Kangata is from, and then Nyandarua, where we have Governor Kimemia. So I believe the combination of the other intercounty, the first question you had asked to the Senator, what is the support from the intercounties, which particularly are surrounding Nyeri? This is where we will start seeing how they will also come in very fast. The Kimemia from the lower side, we have Laikipia and Derito Morethi, we have Governor Anne Waiguru. And then we have Senator and Governor Mwangi wa Iria from Muranga. How will they bring and be able to appreciate this? Let me comment about the issue of the deputy governor, which I was in just concluded elections. I was also running as a deputy governor for Nakuru. This was a wise decision, because right now, immediately Nyeri could have been put into a political situation, people starting to start campaigning again. But with the constitution already, the people who crafted the constitution and having the deputy governor, immediately it puts some time for people to calm down and have the deputy governor in place. Okay. So it's a very good thing, the technocrats of the constitution. Now the only thing that happens, what happens, who deputizes the deputy governor after ascending. That one is not there. It's what if, and that's not the discussion or wishing that it should, God forbid, that the deputy governor goes. What happens again? The constitution did not foresee beyond that point, whereby now these are the discussions. If you go to the social media, they're asking now the deputy governor, after rising to the governor, who becomes the deputy governor? He'll appoint one. I don't know if the constitution.
Let's ask the lawyer, the advocate, I beg your pardon, in the House. Dr. Mkwana, talk to us a little bit about that. And let's not begin there, but start with the process. We've heard from the deputy governor saying, when there is that window for swearing in, then that will happen. What strictly does the law provide for?
Thank you, Anne, for your invite. And it's in order that I begin once again by giving the people of Nyeri sincere condolences. It happened yesterday when you were on show, and I did pass my condolences. I went to school in Nyeri, incidentally, as a young man, and therefore I identify a lot with the people of Nyeri. So once again, pole zangu. The issue of the governor, when a vacancy falls in the office of the governor, the Constitution gives us the answer in Article 182. And in that article it says a number of situations through which that office can fall vacant, one of which, of course, is this unfortunate incident of death. And therefore, then it says that the deputy governor assumes the position of the governor. And some interesting provision there, that if the remainder of the period which the deputy governor will serve is more than 2.5 years, he shall be deemed to have served a full term. Now, for the case of Nyeri, it's actually close to 5 years.
Exactly.
It's close to 5 years. So you have a situation where the deputy governor will have a substantive term of a governor in office. And I think that's where my brother Shmeha and Dr. Stanley talks about, that there is a feeling, for lack of a better word, there is a feeling of injustice on the people by virtue of this provision, because when they elected Dr. Gakuru, they anticipated, all factors remaining constant, that he shall be their governor for 5 years. If the cruel hand of death has robbed them that opportunity, the person who steps in ought to be transitionary, so that a substantive governor comes in place. But I suspect that the framers of this law wanted a situation where there is no instability in terms of the affairs of the government at the county. Remember, Anne, that you have two tiers of government. This is the national and the devolved government. Strictly speaking, that's the government of Nyeri. And just like at the national government, there is no lacuna in the event that the president dies. The deputy assumes. Of course, with other provisions of the election thereafter. In the case of the county, the deputy governor assumes. There is a question there where you said, what happens if something happens to the speaker? If something were to happen to the deputy governor, it is the speaker who assumes. However, in that case, then elections have to be called thereafter. So for me, I think the intention of the framers was good in the sense that there ought to be a smooth transition. Now, as to whether there'll be instability in Nyeri or not, yes, the Swahili people say, Jino la pembe, si dawa ya pengo. So it is true that this deputy may not be the solution to the position of the governor. That way, yes. But in terms of occupants in the office, there can be no instability because the transition is seamless. And in under 1 month, the deputy ought to be up and about running. The only thing that I sympathize with the people of Nyeri is that hilo jino lopewa si dawa ya pengo.
Wow, there you are. You can only go straight to Nyeri from that. Martin Monene, I think, should be ready for us now. Martin, if you can hear me, I want you to take us back to preparations for the burial for the late governor. What more do we know? We've heard of a possible funeral next week and possibly the 18th as the date for burial, the 18th of this month. What more information can you give us?
A very good morning once again to you, Anne. And like you said, we are in Nyeri County, and earlier we were able to speak to the deputy governor who was speaking on behalf of the county government, and he made it very clear that arrangements for the burial of the late Governor Dr. Wahome Gakuru are underway, and it's being done in 3 ways. We have the national level that is being led by CS Mushero, and also he is leading the county government in the arrangement. And the county level is important because it's bringing together residents of Nyeri County, but also leaders who are in this county. That includes the senator, the members of parliament, the MCAs, and also the members of the county executive, including the CECs and other leaders, also religious leaders and other people, to ensure that the respect that the governor deserves is actually accorded to him. But also there is a family level. Yesterday we visited the family, and they were just preparing the home to receive guests who are, of course, expected to be flocking the home of the late governor in solidarity and in support, and actually just stand with the family as they mourn their loved one. I must also say that Nyeri residents have also been asking what happens now from here, and of course, according to the constitution, the deputy governor takes over. And we had earlier, when we had that conversation with him, we asked him about the same, and he said that the focus right now is on ensuring that Governor Dr. Wahome Gakuru has a proper burial and has the respect that he deserves. But due to the fact that it's a legal issue more than a personal issue, that is in terms of transition, as soon as it is possible, they're going to be swearing him in as a governor, and he says that they're still working on that. But he said about the burial, going back to the burial, he said that they are looking for a date that will allow one of Dr. Gakuru's son, who is sitting for his KCSE in be able to attend the burial, and so they're suggesting the 8th Saturday, so that the young man can be able to attend the burial without necessarily having to his examination. And I must say, I'm standing at Nyeri town, and just a few residents to just help us also feel what is the feeling on the ground, how are they receiving this news, and to them, what is the way forward. So let me just speak to two of them, and one of them is actually a leader. I just ran into him. He's a member of the county assembly. Just help us understand, as a leader and also as a Nyeri resident, how are they receiving this news, and also what is the way forward. So kindly, sir, if you can join me. Please just tell us who you are in the area that you represent, and as a leader, how are you receiving this news, and what is the way forward?
Thank you. My name is Warutere Ndegwa, MCA Gatarakwa Ward in Nyeri County. Indeed, we have woken up to the second day when yesterday we received the tragic news of the death of our governor. He's a governor we had a lot of hope in, a governor who had given us a lot of hope in Nyeri. You know, we have had a lot of challenges here in Nyeri. And yesterday was a very bad day. Today we have woken up, we are still mourning, and for the first time I would say the first thing is we want to go to the preparations for the burial of the governor. But we must also know that we must move forward on from here. I am hoping that the deputy governor will be sworn in quickly so that he can be able to take over and also take the mantle from where the governor had reached.
Okay, and maybe just to take you back, previously Nyeri County has had challenges with the county executive, has been in wars actually with the county assembly. As a member of the county assembly, and now that Dr. Wahome Gakuru is gone, and he worked hard to ensure that there is a good working relationship between those two arms of government. Do you feel, as a member of the county assembly, the deputy governor, once he assumes office of the governor, can be able to actually bring together those two arms of government and be able to work seamlessly?
Yes. I think he should be able, because all I know is the deputy governor has been working very well with the governor. They had a vision, they talked together, and they gave us a lot of hope came into the assembly. And I believe the deputy governor will be able to take on the mantle and take Nyeri forward. As a county assembly, we have agreed that we are going to give the deputy governor all he requires so that he can be able to take Nyeri forward. I can assure him that the county assembly will be with him. We will give him 100% support so that he can be able to move our Nyeri forward. Thank you.
All right, like you said, a lot of hope in Nyeri County. Let me just hear one resident tell us, as a resident, labda habari hii unaipokea vipi? Ni siku moja baada ya kifo cha gavana wa kaunti hii. Habari hii inakuadhiri vipi kama mkazi wa eneo hili?
Kifo cha gavana imekuwa uchungu sana. Ilikuja na mstuko. Na kama mfanyabiashara, tunajua mheshimiwa alikuwa mtu wa watu. Hakukuwa na ukabila, hakukuwa na mapendeleo. So wakati hiyo jambo lilitokea, nilistuka mimi personally, but ni mambo ya Mungu. Imeniathiri sana kwa sababu nilipenda, alikuwa mtu wa watu, dakika 2-3 ungekaa na yeye mngekuwa mmeshakuwa marafiki, na iliniumiza sana kama mfanyabiashara na kama mkaazi wa hapa Nyeri.
All right, and that is how things are in this county. People still feeling the pinch of the death of the governor because, like this man said here, he was a man who actually moved around the town, talked with people on a personal level, and people had actually kind of got attached to him because he was, let me say it, he was a man of the people. He was able to interact with anyone, and that is how things are. Preparations are still underway to ensure that he gets the proper burial. Back to you in studio, Anne.
Thank you, Martin, for that report from Nyeri. It's unfortunate to have to do it, Senator, but the reality is that he was holding a political office, and whereas a county is still, you know, a family, a county. He has a son who's sitting for examinations right now. I mean, it really must be completely devastating. But the unfortunate part of it being that he did hold a political post, and that politics seems not to respect anything and will go on. How do you see this affecting the politics of the county and of the central Kenya region in particular? Because he, again, as we've said, you know, was little known, even though he ran before, but really had not asserted himself as one of those, you know, key central Kenya figures up until the point, you know, he took over. And over the last few months, he really built that sort of image of a strong leader in the region. And now questions will wonder, you know, where does that leave the region? This was one of the visionary people in terms of infrastructure, as you've said, etc., and seemed to have, you know, a clear direction on where he believes you know, the Mount Kenya region should go. Where does that leave the region now? Well,
in terms of politics, I agree with you that we can't say much. He was yet to ingrain himself into the entire political infrastructure of our region. But in terms of economics, yes, I think that is where we are going to get the largest hole for obvious reasons. Number one, there's no doubt when you have counties which are adjoining each other, they tend to have some subtle competition. And therefore, on the basis of his academic qualifications, number one. Two, on the basis of his history as a person who was behind Vision 2030, we shall miss a person who could have, for instance, inspired other counties in our region to take a certain direction. I would have seen, by the way, for instance, when it comes to the issue of development, we do have two theories which tend to compete on how you can develop a society. One argues that you need to do more investments in what we call human capital, so therefore you do more investments in education, in health sector, for instance. Another one argues that you need to do more effort in infrastructure. He belonged to the second school of thought. So you may see a situation where, for instance, you don't have a leader per se who is going to champion more investments in infrastructure, which appears to have been the forte of the governor or his purview of looking at development. So to that extent, you may see a gap. You may see a situation where we don't have so-called subtle intra and inter-county competition, where you borrow a certain idea from this area, you borrow a certain idea from this area. That is where his main legacy falls.
I think that's a critical point. I just want to bring in our Francis Gashuri, is a senior political reporter, Citizen TV, and show host on Inoro TV. Francis, I want to pick up from where the senator is talking about the economic impact that, you know, an extended stay of the late governor in office would have had on the larger central Kenya region, because it is a region that has been, you know, struggling. It's been lagging behind, you know, for all its wealth in resources, etc. Many would argue that there isn't much to show for it, and that central Kenya would have been in a much better position. So given the kind of intra-county collaboration that was, you know, expected to, you know, sort of revive this region economically, as much as politically as well, what does this absence of the late governor mean?
Absolutely, and the late governor was one of the key pillars economically in the region, and his very last engagement before his passing on tragically yesterday was the attempt to revive the railway line and the train services in the large amount Kenya region, and that was going to cost about 25 billion shillings or thereabout. And you remember when he met together with other governors from the other counties of Kirinyaga, Kiambu, Muranga, Nyeri, Nyandarua, Laikipia, the idea was to try and transform that railway and help the region economically. It's a revival because the railway was still there some years back, but it collapsed. And so he had this is one of the people who had a very forthright mind, a very candid mind, and knew exactly what the region needed in terms of economic empowerment and growth. And so his demise is definitely a big blow to the region. What now the challenge is whether his colleagues, the other governors, will take up from where he left and will carry the mantle that he had and basically deliver the promise that Dr. Gakuru and his team wanted to deliver for the region economically. His clarity of thought and mind is definitely one of the many things that the region will miss in terms of that economic drive and spurring it to grow definitely.
You've talked about the challenge that the other governors will have, and whether they will carry out with that vision. I wonder if we are saying that it was his brainchild entirely to have the revival of this railway line. Is that what you're saying?
To some extent, but to a larger extent, he was the one who was driving it.
Okay.
And of course, his experience was critical in that revival, bearing in mind that he was one of the architects of the Vision 2030 project. And what he was trying to drive is basically part of it in terms of economic development for the region. And hopefully that the other governors will be able to drive that agenda, because it's an agenda that requires clarity of thought. It's an agenda that requires somebody who has the knowledge, the know-how to drive it. Because unfortunately, it's a region that a lot of times politics dominates, but rarely do you find or hear, let's say, the leadership basically talking about serious development issues other than the normal politics. And this is one gentleman who probably would have managed to steer the discussion from the high volatile politics to maybe more development in terms of how the region grows. And of course, that growth would have definitely impacted on the entire economy nationally and even internationally.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the politics again, which is not even a respecter of death, I suppose. In terms of the dynamics, the political dynamics with these other governors of surrounding counties, where did he sit? Was he accepted into that sort of hallowed clique of real political stalwarts, people who have had largely carved their niche out before, say for two or so? I suppose everybody else had some significant, political experience behind them. And how was he fitting in, and beyond the economics, what was his contribution to the politics of the region?
You didn't say Dr. Wahome was one of the political mainstays in the region, but his experience and he drew a lot of respect from his ability and knowledge on matters of economy and development. That's where he got a lot of respect, especially in the region and among his peers. Politically, I wouldn't say he was such a big political player, but
would he have become one, do you think?
Maybe based on what he would have done, especially for the county. He was one of the in the current crop of governors, you can pick out about 10 or so who you can say have a very clear thought process, and their academic.
Just 10?
About 10, I would say.
Out of the 47?
Probably they will come out as we move on. But at the outset, you can say about 10, and you can name them.
Please don't.
I don't want to ruffle feathers, but you can. There are quite a number that there are about, let's say, 10 that you can say, looking at how they work and the kind of campaigns that they steered, you can definitely say they have an idea about what they want for their specific counties, and he was one of them. And sometimes you hear people argue that not necessarily that if you have the academic background and the qualifications, you may not necessarily be a leader. But from the experience drawn from the pioneer governors, one definitely sees that there's a very huge link between development at the counties and the ability and the clarity of thought from the person who is managing that county, i.e. the governor and the team he constitutes. So Dr. Gakuru was one of those governors that you'd say are a select few who have a very good idea about what they wanted to do for their respective counties, and even collaborate with the neighboring counties, and seek even coordination and seek complementarity with other counties to develop their regions and the country at large. So basically, I wouldn't say he was a big political player. Maybe he would have become, but in terms of being an economic mainstay, I definitely think he was.
And I think that there's been talk, as we wind up, Francis, about you know, sort of, is it, would I call it intra-county authorities, you know, some sort of managing unit for counties to ensure that development projects, you know, have a larger benefit, if you like, or a larger reach across the country. Do you know of the plans for any such authority for the region, and where does that leave Nyeri now?
Now, Nyeri will have to, let's say, do some sort of political re-engineering, bearing in mind that his deputy, Mr. Mutahi, is also not very political. Actually, the governor and the deputy governor were not very political people, because Mutahi draws a lot of his support from the teaching fraternity in the county, having been one of the secretaries of Kenya National Union in that region. Now, the question is, in terms of succession, he will definitely be the next governor for the remainder of the term, and of course he will be deemed to have served a full term, bearing in mind that Dr. Gakuru did not serve more than 2.5 years as outlined in Article 183 of the Constitution. Now the question now focuses on who he will appoint or he will nominate as his deputy. Because of the infighting and the kind of politics that we see in Nyeri County, and remember the kind of a situation that the previous governor, the late Nderito Gachagua, found himself in, definitely it's one of the things that will be on the lookout to see whether the political class, especially in Nyeri County, will now accord the deputy governor who will now become the governor of Nyeri County the support that he requires, whether they will give him the necessary support, because the political intrigues therein continue to dominate. And even before Dr. Wahome died, you would hear some people who were not necessarily very agreeable with him, and you could hear some murmurs here and there, and politically. So basically, let's see how the Nyeri political team and the fraternity generally accords the kind of necessary support that Mr. Mutahi requires. But definitely, it will also be important to see how the other governors in the neighboring counties and in the region will support and work together with the incoming governor, and maybe to carry the dream and the aspirations that the late governor had for the region and the county specifically.
And that's quite right, because he'll be playing the incoming governor in a completely different league, perhaps from what he has been previously accustomed to, in terms of sitting at par with the other governors of the county, owing to their political experience and clout. On the intra-county authority, and anything you know about that? An umbrella body?
What Dr. Wahome and his team were trying to work on was the initiative, that inter-county kind of an initiative. Now, it had already taken off, and the principal project was the revival of the railway line. And hopefully the incoming governor will carry on that ambition, that idea, that drive. And hopefully we'll be able to work with the other governors in the region, because when the head has been cut off, the neck remains, and so let's hope that the neck will be able to rise to the ambitions of the head, that is Dr. Wahome Gakuru, and probably the other governors in the region, because and the future of this country, I think, lies in devolution. The more devolution works, the better for the country, and probably even the less pressure we will have on the top national seat, because people now will be able to not only focus and make decisions in terms of determining the kind of development they want in their counties, but also in the neighboring counties, in the region, and eventually in the nation.
All right, thanks very much. Francis Gashuri is a senior political reporter, Citizen TV, and show host on Inoro TV. We're going to leave it at that in as far as the late Gakuru is concerned. May his soul rest in peace. We want to switch gears now and take you to Parliament briefly. It is in session, I believe. Our Stephen Leto, yes, it is in session. Stephen Leto is standing by for us. He's a senior political